Is it shown?
Learning and development, just like learning.
How it come through?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very clear. Okay, lovely. Good afternoon, everyone. Just giving it a few more minutes for other people to join as well.
Nice day today.
Yeah.
You. Listen to the weekend.
Yeah, 'cause over the weekend I went to the park thinking it was going to be quite warm,
You didn't.
and I didn't take a coat.
Oh, you
And
didn't.
the rain really,
Oh,
yeah.
you do know we live in England and it's October.
Yeah, I learned the hard way.
Oh, here we go. That's learning experience, isn't it?
I learned the hard way.
That is learning.
But I clearly didn't learn enough because I didn't bring a coat again today.
Oh,
So,
okay. Right. Well, learning is about application, isn't it?
So,
Continuous.
At the end of the week, if I tell you I have a cold, you know why.
Yeah.
So,
okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm sure you'll feel it.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our first In Conversation celebrating Black History Month, Learning with Power and Leading with Pride, drawing from the national theme, Standing Firm in Power and Pride. My name is Deborah Adebola. I'm part of the UK Learning and Development team here at Civil Service College, and today's conversation will be focusing on voices that inspire reflection, resilience, and growth, and how learning can shape our confidence and leadership, especially within the public sector. And today I'm delighted to introduce Thembi Watt,
everyone.
who I'll be having a conversation with today. Thembi is an accomplished learning and development professional within the public sector and is currently working within government skills. She also co-hosts a podcast with her colleague, Jonathan Marshall, and the podcast is called How to Learn. And this is where they explore the most important life skill we all possess, which is learning, asking questions like, how do we actually learn? And how can we benefit from understanding the way we learn? Yeah. So today we'll be drawing from her experience and insights, and we'll be having a discussion on how we can make learning a lifelong practice and how it connects our personal and professional development, and how this can empower us to lead with authenticity, resilience, and pride. So, Thembi, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Like we were just saying, the day's really nice. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, thanks for people joining this afternoon as well. I really appreciate it.
That's lovely. It is quite a nice day compared to the weekend.
I know. Typical talking about the weather, but it is important.
Yes, it definitely. So I want to actually start with your podcast.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're technically having a
We are
kind of similar to a podcast.
I'm liking the setting.
It'll be the same feel.
Yeah.
You had an episode where you were speaking about your experience in traveling, traveling by yourself, and then versus traveling with others.
Yeah.
And you talked about the learning experience that you had where you realized you prefer to get to the airport really early so you can go around, have a look around. But when traveling with others, you learned that it was a little bit more last minute.
Diplomatic. One could say.
And you found yourself like rushing to do things that I think you're not very comfortable with.
No.
And for me, that actually raised a really important point in terms of learning from experience and reflection, as opposed to the formal learning, which is like training. So it made me question and think, do people tend to underestimate the learning that can take place from learning from reflection or experiences or mistakes in comparison to formal learning in like classrooms and lectures per se?
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, if any of my friends are listening to this, I do actually enjoy traveling with yourself. So please note that, okay? But we started the podcast, when I think about learning, we started the podcast based on what you've just said there, because as learning and development professionals, in the organization, we met with people saying, I haven't got enough time to do this. When am I going to have time to learn this? When am I going to have time to do that? And we're like, but you learn every day, no matter what. Like, we're just learning about each other right about now. Like, learning it's just a natural process. None of us are static. We're always acquiring new skills, new knowledge, new insight. Like, we are always constantly learning. But I guess for me, it's also like, is there the difference between learning and education? Yeah, because with education, it's deliberate, it's systematic, it's very structured. It's a process of imparting knowledge and skills purposely, but through instructions. So when people are saying, I don't have time to learn, it's like, are they thinking back to school where we had like more 12 different classes? I don't know how we had time to do the 12 different classes, but we had to we had to do so many different topics, and it was really structured. Whereas, and then in the workplace, we're telling people, oh, you need to do your mandatory training. Oh, gosh. I feel like that brings a shudder around people, because like, why do I need to do this? So it makes me think about the 70-20-10 model. It's a model that we always talk about in the learning space, where like 70% of our learning, if we think about it in a workplace, it's on the job learning. I will come and sit next to you, Deborah, and like, can you show me how to do this? That is learning in its time. And then you've got, in life, you're constantly learning. You're learning how to navigate. You're learning how to use your phone, like the multiple different apps. I don't know how I learned how to download apps, but I just do it. I don't know. But then you've got 20% of the learning, which is through social interactions, and working with others. So when you go back to the airport description, that was me learning about how to navigate going to the airport with a group of people. And then you've got 10% of learning, which is the formal training, something that civil service college delivers, but you've got the formal training that's on your work computer. So when you think about all of that, one of the key things for me about learning is self-awareness. And when you know what your areas of strength are and when you want to develop, or when you just know about yourself and when it comes to learning, I think that's how you're able to progress. 100%. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I think it's really important to actually understand yourself, and like using this as an example, with me understanding how I'm like and my personality, I know, I get a little bit anxious when there's something big I have to do. So when I came in, I made it clear, I was like, can we try and not speak like today?
You know,
just for a couple of minutes. And then later on, as the day went by, I know there are things we have to get done, so we can do something like this and speak to you guys today. So I was more open speaking about it. And I think one thing being self-aware allows you to do is be open and have those conversations with people, because once you understand yourself, you can then relay that with other people. Like, this is what I've learned about me. This is what makes it easy. And to go back to your example of traveling with your friends, in that same episode, you did say that eventually you came with the decision that you would just meet them there. So then that way you can still get to the airport and do your browsing around, and then also you can still go on this nice holiday with your friends, obviously, because we like our friends.
Exactly.
That's why we're going on holiday with them. And it then reduces the amount of conflict you can have with people.
Absolutely.
So I think self-awareness is not just important about you knowing about yourself, but it's about also you communicating that with others, that this is who I am. And that way you can also, from you saying who you are, they would feel more comfortable, and that level of trust would have been built, that they will also then relay back to you what they learn about themselves, and then you can come up with a really good compromise on how we can move this forward. Again, using your example of the day where you go a little bit earlier than some of your friends, just so that you can all go on this holiday, but we can all go happy and not silently be angry at each other over these little things. So self-awareness is really important, more than just for yourself, but also
for others. And there's ways in which I think about Johari's window, which is like a framework, that it's a tool that was developed to help people understand their relationships, not with themselves, but with other people. And there's things that you might not be aware of, but other people are observing. And when you just described how you came into work and you were like, you communicated, I'm feeling like this, that enables people to think about, okay, how do we navigate this? Whereas if you come in not aware that you're feeling a certain way, you don't know how that's coming across, and people could be like, okay, why is she being like that? So I think also just knowing yourself, but feedback. We did a podcast about feedback being a gift. Now, after this session, I'm going to be like, have you got any tips? By the way, guys, do send us some feedback on this. But I think feedback, it helps you become a lot more self-aware and understanding where, I don't want to say blind spots, but things that you are not aware of, comes up more to the surface.
Feedback is
a gift, and there's no such thing as bad feedback. Truly, really and truly, it's perception, isn't it? If someone says, I didn't like how you did that, there's somebody else that'll say, I liked how you did that.
True.
So yeah,
I think, and both of them are learning curve, because you get to see, okay, if the person who did like it, you get to learn what they liked.
Exactly.
You can apply that next time. And then with the person who didn't like something, it also allows you to be like, oh, that wasn't the intention I had for this.
Exactly.
But it also raises a really good point on intention versus impact, and knowing that, okay, having this discussion or this point in this PowerPoint or whatever, someone can get this meaning from it. Okay, so how can next time, maybe when I'm having this topic, talking about this topic or this point, maybe I can shift my point about a bit, or change the wording, or maybe take out
knowing your audience.
Understanding that, okay, because someone can have this kind of impact from this statement, that means someone else could potentially have that. So I think feedback, you're right, there is no bad feedback. It's helpful because you get to learn from different perspectives. Absolutely. And then you can adapt what you want to adapt from that.
100%. You've always got to be open to it, but like also it doesn't just start with you. You also need to know your audience, and just knowing who wants direct information. Sometimes it could be a simple. I remember getting tasked with like how do you want this information? That's not suffer. Just ask the question. How do you want this information presented to you? And you'll be amazed at how much people will just give you the feedback on what they're looking for.
Yeah, no, that is.
Sorry, we're going off script here, aren't we? This is learning, isn't it?
But that's a good thing, because I guess when we're going off script, it means we're having a really good conversation. And then there's more points that our audience can take from this. And I think, especially in terms of feedback, because I like feedback. I like when someone tells me, especially in the from what I can do better. I think for me, I always want to know how I can elevate my work, or like even with this, guys, again, please do give us feedback at the end. I would love to hear how I could speak more clearly or be a bit more confident in my public speaking. So feedback is really important for growth. And also sometimes feedback isn't always going to tell you what to do better next time. It can also be a form of reassurance.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I tend to be someone who overthinks their speaking, and I think in feedback, someone could say something like, "Oh, you was really clear," and I'm like, "Oh, I wouldn't have said that about me." That's nice. So I think feedback is really powerful. I think sometimes when we think about feedback, we always think about what we can do better, but there's also a conversation about what you're already doing well, and championing that, and rejoicing in that. Yes, I'd say. So I guess you spoke about making learning part of your practice, but I think in particular within the public sector, we all understand that learning is important, and this is something we're supposed to do. But as we know, with the public sector, it's quite complex, and priorities often changes, whether it's a change in government, or it's because there's a change in deputy director, or just in general a strategy policy that was drafted maybe like 5 years ago is not really as effective now. So there's a new one that has happened, and sometimes there isn't time per se for learning. And I guess my point is, I would like to hear your thoughts on how can individuals make learning a part of their everyday practice, and also how can leaders actually encourage a genuine culture for learning, and it's not just a tick box thing, that is actually something that leaders do believe in.
Yeah, I think so. For me, in terms of everyday practice and applying learning, I don't know about you, but your job description just gives you a hint of what you're expected to do. But actually, when it boils down to the task that you actually have to do, you realise that there's certain skills that you do have to deliver the task, or you might not. So for me, it's like just-in-time learning, like learning in, you've been asked to do something, I keep saying picking up the phone, but sending a message to someone to say, hi, I've been asked to do this. Can you help me? Do you know how I can do that? That in itself is already starting the learning process. And so for me, don't think of learning as let me carve out 15 minutes to do this training course. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Do that training course, but also ask the question. And it goes back to being curious. You are not expected to know everything. There's no way. But what you're expected to do is to critically think about something, and how you problem solve is via being curious, asking questions, the when, what, why, how. And the person who set you the task probably doesn't even know that. So you find out.
Okay.
So being confident to go and find out the answer. And even if you go on ChatGPT, you still need to have some level of discernment to be like, prompt it effectively so that you can get your answer. In terms of leaders, I found that when leaders role model their own learning journey, that is so encouraging and so powerful. I don't even feel like they recognize how encouraging it is to people to hear a leader saying, hey, I just learned this from a training course, or talking about an everyday sort of learning process that they went through. Actually sharing things can go a long way. And I think for me also, leaders, where it's been really proven effective is when leaders actually provide that space and actively encourage. So I've got a team who I will be really that person that, what's your learning this year? What we're doing? What you gonna? Are you signing up to a formal course? Or if someone's got a task, like, okay, well, why don't you go and ask so and so you can shadow them and build up that learning in that space. So I think for leaders, it's about being deliberate and intentional. I've got a team working on a piece of work, and one of the things I said is that, do you actually know how to do this? And they're like, no. I said, okay, great, let's work together and we can upskill you. And that's it. Upskilling somebody goes a long way. So taking the time out to do that. But I do actually think as an individual, you can also, don't wait for somebody to tap you on the shoulder and say, go and do your learning. I'm just natural. I'm like, you're in control of your own. If we think about from a career, you're in control of your own career pathway. You're in control of what it is that you want to learn. So if you have gone back to that whole self-awareness piece, you know what areas you want to develop, you know what areas you've got strength in, you could use that to your advantage. So for your strength, you could be like, I'm really good at data analysis. Can I help this team out? Or from a development point of view, oh, I'd love to develop my data analyst and analytical skills. Can I shadow you? So it's not a one-way street. It's doing things together. So you're in control of it. Line manager can provide you that space. Leaders can provide you that space. Get a mentor. Love a mentor. Absolutely love a mentor. That is really, like, my mentors have been such a help in terms of my own learning journey. Always get a mentor.
No, so that's actually really good. So what I'm hearing, there's two parts to this.
Yeah,
One, you have to take ownership of your learning.
Absolutely.
And make that decision. But there's also an important part of having leaders, modeling
absolutely.
the type of behaviors that they want to see, because like we know people are most likely copy what they see as opposed to what you say. So if a leader is taking that leadership, is leading by example and going at that learning, it does highlight to that team that, oh, maybe I should be taking my personal development a lot more seriously, because the went on the terrible course or has learned this new skill and is sharing it back. So yeah, that is really important. And I also think having leaders and line managers that are supportive of their individuals is really important in helping that culture of learning, because I think sometimes you might find that some managers, they might say, oh, just attend this course, but there's no really discussion on this is why we think you should attend this course. Like, again, using this as an example, when this opportunity was first presented to me, I know how nervous I was, but one of the managers was like, but this is why we wanted you to do it, because we see how passionate you are about talking about Black History Month, and why, and you have a lot to say about it. And then, like, you know what, you are right.
Exactly.
So I think, there is an important part of, yes, leaders leading by example, but us as individuals taking that ownership and being like, maybe I can work on this. And I think that's what happened to me, was after having the discussion and I'm like, you know what, you are right. I am passionate Black History Month. I do have a lot to say, and I do you want to talk about it? So yeah, I'm gonna do it. So yeah, I think there's a really important part in the two coming together, in terms of taking ownership and being curious, and also having supportive line managers.
Yes.
But I also think, especially with the being curious part, it again reminds you of being having that childlike personality.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because children, like the first sense that they're always figuring out is mouth. Everything goes in their mouth when they're first trying to figure out things, and then it goes into once they're able to formulate the words and asking questions. I remember my nephews always getting the why when I'm telling them to do something, but it's because they want to understand. And I think as adults, we tend to forget about that whole curious part of when we learn something new. So I think as adults, we need to get back into that childlike mind and being curious and being like, and asking why, or just putting yourself forward for things, even if those things tend to be part of your discomfort zone. But yeah, no. So I think this is really important because it can help bridge that gap between personal and professional growth, because I think sometimes we tend to see those two things as separate things. However, when you're taking care, what you're taking care of in your personal life will also transcribe into your professional life. So if you're someone who isn't as confident in speaking, if you're if you're doing more like this podcast, or you're putting yourself forward for more speaking arrangements, so like you could be doing performances, like I know, for example, like some of our trainers do are part of the theatre, so they get to work on their speaking and slash singing and being in front of an audience outside of their professional work, which is training, where they're already doing that. So you can see how they're like, I guess I won't say promoting, but like they're harnessing that skill elsewhere in their personal life. So there is an important part that your personal growth and your professional growth tend to coincide. And I guess, drawing from your experience, how can you say that being self-aware and well-being can shape your performance at work in understanding who you are personally and bridging that into your professional growth?
Yeah, I guess something for me, if I think about the organization that I work with, it aligns with my values. And that's really important, because when something aligns with your personal values, that's already your personal and professional bridging to coming together. And so for me, when I think about, I'm lucky to have an organization that I do work for that does align with my values, really love it. But when I think about from a personal professional point of view, there's so many examples actually. So one of the things that I do on and off is I volunteer at a food bank on a Sunday. And so why do I volunteer? Obviously, I love working in community and I want to give back. But there's something about the skill set that I have in a professional space that aligns with like the volunteering, and the whole rota system, structuring, giving guidance. It all works together in that space. But then also when you think about, I love the podcast, that's a personal thing, because what I do like to do in work is talk about learning. So, hey, great, let's talk about learning, isn't it? Let's constantly talk about learning, because I love learning. And I've been in HR and the L&D profession for about 16, 17 years. I always think about, why did I join HR? And the reason being is because I love supporting people. And I thought HR and L&D is a great way in empowering and providing the space for people to develop. So it hones in terms of what my values are, supporting people to develop and grow. I do believe like there's no one size fits all. And I think you've got to give people the space to develop. And then that allows people to go for the job. So also another thing is HR is all about competitive advantage, and it can be competitive. So I was like, this is how you do it. Like, as long as if you upskill everybody, then that means we're going to win, isn't it, as an organisation? Little did I know I'd be working in the public sector, but yeah. So for me, the bridging the gap is working in a space where it does align with your values, but also doing things that aligns with your values is really, really, really key.
Again, 100% agree that, I guess, why we're here today is because this is bridging the gap with my personal values, as well as understanding how important and how impactful conversations like this is, especially from two women that look like us. It's really important. And I think sometimes we're always told to leave your personality at home when you come in the office. But I think sometimes it's actually needed because, example, again, if I hadn't shown the side of me that was passionate about Black History Month, maybe this conversation might not have happened, or maybe I could have said, "Oh, maybe we should have a proper a webinar discussion on this." But I think there is something important about bringing who you are into your role and understanding, especially in terms of where your values sit, and understanding how that can impact your role and also impact the work you're doing and who you're reaching out to. Like right now, there's probably people who haven't come to our in conversation discussions before, and this is their introduction to us, and they get to see, oh, they do value some of the things that I value, some of my values too. And I think that is quite important as well, in terms of being self-aware. But I also want to talk about, when we look at bridging the gap between personal and professional growth, is how that actually looks like. And I think sometimes we think about well-being just being that, oh, you're happy in the office or you're happy at home, but there is a really key line between well-being being about how spaces have been out, whether it's from your line manager or your team, in terms of creating spaces where they made people feel comfortable, in terms of not just for learning but also just to do their work. So basically what I'm trying to ask is, how can line managers, if they have noticed that their team might, okay, they've led by example, they've done all these things, and they're still seeing that their team isn't taken to these things and to be able to create that culture of learning. How can line managers then, what things or what can line managers suggest to their team to see in trying to bring them along and to figure out what the issue seems to be?
I mean, it goes back to, so when you talked about bringing your whole self to work, you'd only do that in a space where you feel psychologically safe. So that's really key, because you think you want everybody to bring their whole selves to work because you've got diversity of thought. Obviously, we're all going to be different how we are in a workspace to how we are in family settings. Like my godchildren, they just, they see a whole different side to me, and they don't understand the concept of work. So like, we do definitely have different sort of personas and character that we bring out in the workplace. But in terms of like, so you're a leader, you've done everything, you've role modeled, you've carved out time things, and people are just still not grasping it. I think it goes back to the question, like, why? Like, sit down with the individual, because sometimes people don't learn the way you think people are going to learn. And the question is, I always ask the question, like, okay, what's your learning style? How best do you learn? And you'll find some people are just like, oh, I just prefer you just to talk to me. Or can you just send me it in text so I can read it and go away? So it comes down to, as a leader, speaking to people individually and just saying, okay, how is it that you learn? But then also, as a leader, you're there to set the vision. So you need to bring people along. So where in the story is it not catching on? And is there something about your storytelling, telling people why it is important to do this, that is not landing? And so, you know, you could be like, some people could be like, oh, I've told them countless amount of times and they're still not getting it. And I'm like, yeah, but how did you tell them? And what did you tell them? And have you been clear about the vision, the story? What are we doing this for? What's the purpose? Because it goes back to what we talked about, education. If someone told me the purpose of why I was doing chemistry, I probably would have been a bit more engaged, isn't it? But instead, I just got told you've got to do chemistry and you need to pass a test. But if someone explained why chemistry is important, how will chemistry support me? If that story that resonated with me, I probably would have been a bit more attentive in it. And it goes back to, when I think about education in school, guarantee I could tell you a story about an experience, but I couldn't tell you what I've probably learned in a class that I wasn't engaged in. And so storytelling for me is the golden thread to bringing people along with that journey. So it's not, sometimes not always, and sometimes the people just they're not engaged. They just want to come in, do what they need to do, and they don't want to come on that journey. And that's absolutely fine. Another thing is being clear about the task. So being very clear, can you do this? And the reason why I'm putting you on this learning thing is because we need you to be able to do this by then. And you said that you don't have the skills to do that. Simple. I say simple, have a conversation. It's just having a two-way conversation. So as a line manager, it's setting that story, but then there's also your interpersonal, your ability to have build interpersonal relationships. You don't need to know what someone's doing over the weekend, but you just need to know, how does Deborah like to learn? What's the best way to engage with Deborah? And sometimes it's also, Deborah, you tell me, how do you like to learn? What's the best way to engage with you? It's a two-way street.
Yeah, I guess the main theme of this conversation is, one, being self-aware, but
Absolutely.
two, the conversation. And I think you're right. How can you tell this story? Like, I think I went on a training course actually a couple of weeks back, and it was on persuasive storytelling. And I felt like, oh, that was something I needed to come on, because how can I am not sure how to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Even though it's a conversation I have many times with my friends and things like that, but I'm like, well, I'm doing it differently this time. But yeah, understanding what the story is and relaying that information, because you're right, it could have been how the story was being said to the person. Like, we all learn differently. The way I'd like to be spoken to might not be the same way you'd like to be spoken to, or you'd like information relayed to you. So if the same line manager was telling, maybe the way they were saying it is something that resonates with me, which is why I would have taken on the journey to actually go and try and learn new things. But maybe because of the way they were saying it wasn't something that was fitting with you. So of course you're like, oh yeah, I'll do that later. And it's not necessarily that you're against doing any learning, it's just that the story wasn't hitting for you.
It wasn't.
And that's really important. And I guess, also being clear of why, and telling them, because I think sometimes some people are like, okay, I have to do this, but why? Again, it goes back to the point I made about kids always asking why. They do what you tell them to do, but they just need to understand why. And some people really need to understand why they need to do something, and then that can be helpful in them understanding the need for it, and then them being more, to use phrase used before, curious about it, and being like, okay, I'm gonna give it a try, I'm gonna give it a go. And I think sometimes managers need to also understand that just because someone isn't doing something right now doesn't mean that they're against it, or they're not in for change. It's they just want to understand, again, the reason why.
Absolutely.
And it's not questioning anyone's like leadership or authority. It's just for better understanding, because when you understand something, you're more willing to do it, you're more willing to welcome it, and you're more willing to be like, okay, let's go. And I think that's a good thing. You should be happy you have people who ask why, because they want to know more, and that they're curious about it. So, and that's what we want. We want people who are curious.
But look, everybody's always like, what's in it for me? And it's the push-pull effect. So you need to understand who it is that you're talking to. Me personally, I'll just be like, okay, how long have I got? Cool, just tell me what I need to do. Some people do want to sit down, know the story, know the rationale, understand the background. And it's just being you as a leader or somebody that's tasking people to be adaptive in your skills to bring people along the journey with it. So it's that push-pull effect. Yeah.
So, as I mentioned in my introduction,
we're going back to scripts, aren't we?
Just a little bit.
Sorry.
Just a little bit. As I mentioned in my introduction, the national theme for Black History Month is standing firm in power and pride. And this is celebrating strength, identity, and leading to have an impact on positive change. So this is about knowing who you are, which is a theme we've been talking about this whole time, standing by your values, even in spaces that don't make it easy or comfortable. Which I'm pretty sure everyone at some point has had that. And standing firm in your power isn't just about your job title or your authority. It's about being self-aware and the strength that comes from your lived experiences. Also, when we look at pride, it's not necessarily about individual achievement, but it's also about how the journey can or has opened doors for others before you or after you. So, reflecting on that theme, my question for you is, what does standing firm in your power mean to you?
Well, you touched upon it. And so for me, when I think about historical figures, people before me, mum, dad, granddad, they were part of the Windrush generation, what they went through to allow me to get to this point. For me, if they'd stopped if they had stopped, I don't think we would be here today. Like we wouldn't have the experiences that we're fortunate to experience now. And I feel like future generations are going to even accomplish even more than what we've done. So for me, standing firm in power is you've got courage, you've got leaders, you've got people that have been resilient, they've had the door shut down on them, they've been told they're not this, but no point did they give up. And it's like, if you give up, what is that saying for the future generation? It's so amazing. For me, I love this because, like, when I moved down from Manchester to London, I was overwhelmed with the diversity. I was like, oh my gosh, there's like senior people that look like me. This is it. I found it so encouraging, but I hadn't realised how much that meant to me and how much that inspired me to progress. And so I just think standing firm is just acting courageously, obviously not radical, not I won't say radical, just being courageous in yourself, standing up for what you believe in, what you believe is right, standing together. Because these individuals didn't just do it by themselves, it was a community, and being in a community and working together, that is what we talk about standing firm in power. And it also helps you overcome barriers because when I speak to my mentors, they've been through some stuff. So when I'm talking to them about things, they're like, no, this is what I went through, this is my experience. And just hearing that, you're like, okay, it's not just me. How do we keep moving forward? My mum always says we're in a marathon, it's handing over the baton. It's not a marathon, it's a relay. We're always going to continuously hand over that baton. And so I love this theme because it's just a reminder, like, yeah, there's things that's happening, but don't lose hope and don't lose sight because there's people before us, like if they lost hope and if they lost like the faith, we wouldn't be here where we're at now. So for me, it's just about continuing to show up. Like when you asked me to do this, I was like, okay, yeah, cool, let's do this. Let's speak on it. Let's just talk about things that we don't necessarily always talk about. But I do feel there's leadership and there's things that people in the past have shown that have built up, I don't know, my personal resilience to things. And yeah, I just want to just be part of this movement and yeah, stand up for things that do resonate with me, that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree with that. I think if we was to let things like how hard it is be the reason why we stop, if that was done, like you said, like 20 years ago, we wouldn't be here. And it also makes me think about as well, like my grandma, like her coming to the UK, like and her being like the only black like matron in the hospital she was working in, and I'm like, if she had chosen to give up, there wouldn't be any other, like she's unaware of how many young black nurses that were probably looking up to her like, oh, she did it, I could do this. But if she had given up, the gap would still be much larger. But as we see, like these things are closing up, and it's really important to understand like the journey, yes, will be hard, but that's what standing firm in power and pride is understanding that it's going to be hard. You might be the only one in the room for a minute or two, but it's understanding that my dad always says it, heavy's the head that wears the crown. Is that how the saying goes? But in that time, yes, it will feel heavy, but maybe 10 years later, we see the change and we get to see that, like even looking at the public sector and like seeing people of color being in such high leadership positions, which maybe 10, 20 years ago wouldn't have been a thing. But with programs like, for example, the Fast Streamer program that can literally fast streams people into like the grade sevens and things like that. Like it has been very helpful for people in black and brown communities and getting into the civil service like that. So I think it's a standing firm in power and pride is having the courage and the resilience to be like, I understand it's going to be hard, but I'm ready to take the journey and walk the walk. So
yeah. And I don't even think it's going to be hard. I just think I don't use that word hard because I just feel call it a learning experience. Let's change that hard to that. It's going to be a learning experience. Is it going to be challenging? Yes, but it'd be a development opportunity. It development, yeah.
It definitely will be a development opportunity.
Yeah.
We do have a few questions.
Oh gosh, we do have a lot of questions, don't we?
And yeah, so I guess we'll go with the first one. So how does leading with pride so when does leading with pride mean in a modern workplace context? Tell us from your personal experience. So I think the same. What does leading with pride mean in a modern workplace context? So what's your personal experience been with that?
I touched upon it before. So I just love learning. So one of the key things for me is I always showcase forget learning, leading with pride. So my mum is like I mentioned, she's very prominent in Manchester, and she's an retired lecturer. And one of the things the Guardian picked up on a story for her. I was so proud of that. And I don't necessarily talk about my family in the workspace setting. I don't know why, but one of the things I did do is I did put on the LinkedIn post congratulations to my mum, and share the article. And that for me was a really proud moment, because I had quite a lot of people from work saying, God, I didn't know your mum was like that. I didn't know it. It's sort of like sharing a bit more about myself in the workplace. So that was a personal experience to me, to put that on LinkedIn and let the world see, oh yeah, this is actually my mum. She writes books, she does this, but yeah, this is my mum, and I'm very proud of her. But I also think when it comes to leading with pride, knowing who you are, and like I said, my values is honesty. I haven't said what my values are, but I do pride myself in being honest, open and fair. And so I am firm but fair, and people do know that about me. And that's how I work. So you might have situations where something's out of policy, but you have to be a bit more fair about how you apply the policy, but also firm as well. So it's juggling the business needs around personal things and just being a bit more discerning in that space.
And as a reader, I'm gonna want to know your
Yeah.
I do like to read. So I guess there is quite a lot of questions about pride.
Yeah, there is.
Which I'm actually quite happy about, because pride was one that I was quite, should I include that in the theme? And I think the next question actually was one of the main reasons why I was like, oh, I don't know if I can put that in the theme. But pride can often be misunderstood as arrogance. How can you distinguish between leading with pride and leading from ego?
Right. Do you know, I've got this saying, can we leave your ego at the door, please? I literally do. Can we leave the ego at the door? We've got to just crack on with this piece of work that we need to do. Because you can tell when the ego's coming in, people can be a bit disruptive unnecessarily, because you're thinking, oh, this is more to do with you than actually what we're trying to do. And sometimes you just have to have that antenna on and be like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. However, this is where we need to navigate from. So it can also, but then leading with pride can be mistook as arrogance, because sometimes it's how you communicate. And so it depends on how you communicate. Unless you're able to you need to tell someone why. Like, people said to you, you love it, you love Black History Month, you're really passionate, you're proud about it, you've got so much pride around it. You probably didn't say that in an arrogant way or an egotistical way. You were just being true to your core, and that this is how it is, and this is how it makes me feel. Whereas I feel with the ego, it can be a bit, you're not thinking about anybody else, you're just thinking about me. And we work in an organization with thousands, hundreds, more than anything that you do with more than one person, you just have to leave your ego at the door. And I think if you are mistook as being arrogant when you're being prideful, get some feedback from somebody, like, what makes you think that? But yeah, arrogance is definitely different from being pride. I can tell you that for certain. You know when someone's being arrogant.
It definitely can.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what we were saying before about the intention versus impact. Especially if it's being used to develop others, then, and it's not about just focusing on what you did, but actually the learning experience from that thing, from that hardship or that experience that you're sharing with others. I think that takes away from it being egotistical, where it's just like, I did this and then I did this. But there is an important part in learning from other people's achievements, or even just from their experiences. So I guess this one's actually a really good question about so we spoke about making it an everyday habit. So the question is, what's one habit or mindset shift that can help people become more intentional learners at work?
So from a mindset shift, have a growth mindset. Like I think I talked about curiosity a lot. Just from a mindset shift, just be okay. Leave that ego. You don't know anything, and be okay with saying, I don't know how to do this. Like whenever I'm learning something, I just like blank canvas. Like, can you educate me, please? I'm an absolute blank canvas. I don't know what's going on. And be okay to say that. So that would be from a mindset shift. From a habit point of view, when it comes to learning at work, there's something that I do on a Monday, which is I do look through my diary and I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? And believe it or not, on a Friday, I do a little bit of a reflective piece, which is like, what did I learn today? Not today, but what have I learned over the week? Or even at the end of the day, I do like take a couple of like 30 minutes just to like write down my own reflections. So that's one habit, just reflecting on what it is that you've learned. If you're a tip I could tell you, if you've got some meetings in your diary, before you go to that meeting, guarantee you read those papers and you would have learned something. So understand, like, just be intentional. When it comes to being intentional about learning, you're already doing it. Why not just label what it is that you're doing? You're reading a paper to upskill yourself and your knowledge. That is learning in itself already.
No, it's like, I think that's one thing I do like to do, is when there is an agenda, I do have to read it, because one, there might have been a discussion that I might have probably missed over the email, so it's most likely going to be in that agenda. But yes, 100%, like, I agree with that. So I keep moving the wrong mouse, so I'm just gonna look for maybe two more questions and then see. Okay, so you said before that learning doesn't just happen in classrooms, it happens in conversations and mistakes too. How do people, how, how do, how do you help people see value in those less polished learning moments?
Less polished feedback, to be quite honest. So, I don't use the word mistakes. I say like opportunities or development. I got told once we don't say mistakes. I was like, do you know what? I like that mindset. But where I've seen learning, less polished, it's for me just giving that feedback or checking in with someone like, oh, that went really well. Do you want me to give you a bit of feedback? Can go a long way, because that person will probably either be open to it or not open to it. So I would give feedback just in time, like there and then. How do you help people see the value in those less? Yeah. And then in terms of seeing the value of the less polished moment, okay, storytelling. Let's just tell people the story, go through a storytelling approach, and that is how you will see, people will see the value of it. Go through your own experiences. I don't know, like I've got Google on my phone, but I still get lost. I don't know how, but that's just me just giving people a bit of story. So I do think telling people a good story will help people understand their less polished learning moments. Yeah.
I guess like the theme that we have been saying today, apart from being self-aware, is feedback and the art of storytelling. Because again, people want to understand why. And so if you're able to articulate why this is happening and why this is equally as important as you being in a half day or a full day training session, like what you're going to learn from this and how that can then help you in your work, or not just in your work, again, also in your personal life too, that is equally as important.
Equally as important, definitely. I mean, I've got a lot to say to that. That's a good question. I've got a lot to say in there.
Okay, so you work across diverse teams and spaces. How do you approach conversations about identity and belonging in a way that invites openness rather than defensiveness? I feel like I was like, oh, that's a really good one.
I mean, how would people be defensive? But okay, in terms of like approaching conversations about identity and belonging, there's something that we've all got in common is that we are same but different. Okay, we're all human, but we're going to have different approaches, and that's absolutely fine. We're going to have different preferences. We're going to have different ways in which we walk to work. Difference is there irregardless. But one of the key things for me in terms of inviting that conversation is letting people know that we're all different, but there's no one size fits all. And being respectful of people's differences is key. Understanding it, being open to people, being open for people to share. Because you need to create an environment which is psychologically safe, and that's the key thing. And to invite conversations, you need to also project to people that you're open to having these conversations, whatever the conversations is, but to know that people aren't going to be judged.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing, knowing that I can come and approach you about something and there's not going to be repercussions or there's not going to be a negative impact on it. And so sometimes if there's defensiveness, it might be because they might feel like there's going to be a repercussion or it's going to impact someone negatively. And for me, it's like, well, what's that environment? What's happening in that environment that leads someone to think or to be defensive? That's what I would say in that space. So creating a space, creating an environment that encourages the openness, knowing that everybody's going to be respected, knowing that people can be trusted with whatever it is that you want to share, but no judgment. It's a judgment-free space.
Being respected is really important, and I think sometimes we forget how there are the cues that people can already sense when, in terms of our body language, when we speak. Like, I feel like if I was talking to you, but I was like looking away, or I wasn't giving you my attention, you would sense that, and then the way you deliver the session, you might not be as open as you're being now. So I think it's really important that we recognize that if someone does come across quite different, can come across as defensive, or they don't seem like in their conversation they're not really being open, it might be we haven't provided them with the space to be open or to feel like they can open up and be free. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Like, there's no one size fits all approach. Just try things out. This is all about learning. There's not a manual on how to do these things or have conversations, but just have discernment in terms of your approach and be open, take a growth mindset, be curious, and also just ask the question.
Yeah,
just ask the question.
There's a few things.
Just ask the question, like it can go away.
Okay, so I guess one last question. In advancing the concept of social learning, how are we able to filter distractions?
Yeah, okay. So social learning, given how we work, the hybrid way of working, there is a lot of noise. Like, I don't know about you, but on my computer at work, on my phone, people can contact you via IMs, email, and a text message on your work phone through somebody else, and they're trying to get hold of you. Like, people, like there's no barriers, there's no boundaries anymore. And so for me, in terms of when it comes to social learning, it's about being really focused. So we now need to be intentionally focused about what it is that we want to learn and focus on. Whereas before, I think because people didn't have access to you, you probably unconsciously knew that you could have your focus time. So when it comes to like advancing the concept of social learning, for me, it's having a contract. And by contract, it's being very clear about providing a space, not safe, but providing a space, providing dedicated time, providing, I won't say like rules of engagement, like, hey, this is like our space in which this is how we're going to be learning, this is what we appreciate, no phones. It might sound a bit archaic, but actually it's really helpful in modern day times to actually say, okay, we know there's a lot of distractions. Please can you leave your phone on the side because this is what we're trying to learn. And when it does come to social learning, I'm a person that can easily get distracted. I will see stuff like, oh, I want to get involved in that. I want to be involved in that. But I have to also be focused on actually, is this relevant to the current role that I'm doing? Is this relevant to the task that I'm doing? And then that will help me just be a bit more focused on what I need to be doing. Yeah. So there's so much to learn out there though. You can do so much. And especially like at your fingertips, you're scrolling. You have to be put really dedicated time to, you do, yeah.
I think just honing on that point about setting those like type of boundaries, making it clear that I think that's something that I'd say a lot of our trainers do, especially with our virtual training, because it's so easy to get distracted. Like an email can come in and you're literally, because you're on your laptop, you're going to see that notification. But one of our trainers that really loves telling them, like, if you can, put your notification on mute, just so you can be present, because I think it's so easy to get distracted with everything being virtual, and like you were mentioning, like hybrid teams as well. Like some people might be working from home while you're in the office, so everything is like going through that. So it can take you away from that learning from that learning mind frame, because like if you're going to see an email and it's like, oh, this looks like an emergency, okay, let me respond to that, and then you respond to that one email, and then another one comes in, and then that's it, you've gone. And I'm someone who's known for getting distracted just like that, literally answering one email and then going on to the next. So yeah, it's really quite important to set those.
You need to set, we call it contracting in organizational development, like set that contract with people in the space, and first 10 minutes you'll say like, look, we're all here to learn. This is what we want to learn. Can we all agree to A, having our cameras on, B, turning off our email notifications, C, only using your lunchtime to do things outside of the training course, D, it's important. It's not just about you in this learning space, it's about all of us in this learning space. So it goes back to the storytelling. Bring people in as to why it's important that we filter out the distractions. Yeah. And I've seen it done really well, to be quite honest, in a number of training courses where it's been very clear about the expectations of learners on a training course. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Gosh, sorry, we've definitely gone off script, haven't we? Like, but I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Deborah. And thank you for those that have joined. Do add me on LinkedIn. If I've not answered any of your questions, add me on LinkedIn. I'd be so happy to just have a chat, have a coffee chat and learn from each other.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today. It was very engaging and insightful conversation. What I really liked is how you brought the conversation about being self-aware, but as well as being self-aware, how important feedback is in helping people be self-aware, but also with that feedback, communicating to someone, because they might not know what type of behaviors or interactions they're given off. So your feedback will be beneficial for them to be even more self-aware, but also the art of storytelling, because people want to know why, and it's important that people understand why, because if they understand why something's important, why would they want to do it? Why would they feel open or willing to do it? So, and again, communication. I love communication. Communicating is really helpful, and it helps build those trusts, and it helps build that understanding, not just with yourself, but with others. And then it allows us to work together really well, and without any conflict and things like that. Absolutely. But I also want to say a big thank you to all of you for listening in. I hope you all found today's conversation really insightful. But yes, for just to let you guys know, the recording will be posted in the next, I'd say by the end of the week, you will all receive an email from our team on the video on YouTube, as well as we'll also give out Thembi's LinkedIn in that email, just so you can all have that and connect with her and ask her any questions you'd like to ask. But other than that, I hope you all have a lovely rest of the day, and we'll see you in our next conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Stay connected. That was really enjoyable.